Hi, I'm Jennifer Simmons with AIM, and this is Matt Greller, our CEO. And it is week 8, the halfway point of the long session of the Indiana General Assembly. Jumping right in, Matt, House Bill 1596, uses of TIF. There was some movement on that bill this week that we're not particularly excited about.
Well, that's one way to look at it. I think it's one of the more challenging bills we've been faced with the last couple of years. It has gone from a bill that addressed a particular issue in one community and some other perhaps school-related projects involving TIF around the state to a much broader TIF discussion about how we can spend money outside of the allocation areas or TIF districts that we have all over the state of Indiana that we use constantly for economic development, a very important tool. So we have a lot of work to do in the Senate, a lot of work to do in the rest of the legislative session on this bill. It's probably our top priority bill in terms of negative bills out there right now. It's something we really need to focus a lot of effort and resources on.
There's some good news. We talk every week about annexation, and sometimes we get a little frustrated by what's happening over at the State House, but this week we have some good news. Senate Bill 556 so it went our way. In the Senate.
Yeah, I did. If you recall, 556 is the bill that gives county commissioners veto authority over annexations initiated by cities and towns. Did not pass out of the Senate. It was not defeated either. It did not receive enough votes to move on through the process and thereby defeated. So that language is dead for this session, which is good news for cities and towns.
Dark stores. Now that's another issue. We haven't talked a lot about this session, but in previous sessions, can you explain the topic and a little bit about Senate Bill 623?
Yeah, I think many of you are very familiar with the dark store assessment process. You have big box stores like Targets or Kmart's or the big retailers that use abandoned or not in use properties similar in size and nature and stature for assessment purposes. They try to compare themselves to those so they reduce the amount of property tax they're paying. It's become a real issue for cities and towns, reducing the amount of money that comes into us from a property tax revenue standpoint, often resulting in us having to issue large refund checks back to the owners of those properties. So some good news in the Senate. The Senate bill that Jennifer's talking about is 623. And it would change the assessment process for new construction. So when a new big box retailer or something of that nature comes in, or your community it is built, they have to use the cost-based assessment method, the cost that it took to build the facility for assessment purposes for the first 10 years. So they couldn't build it and then immediately go and try to compare themselves to a store that was out of business or dark. So that's some positive news on that front. We'll continue to work that bill in the House and hope that it moves forward in our direction.
Last thing today is Indiana is one of the few states without a bias crimes law. This has been a big discussion at the State House this year, and I know the governor has been particularly vocal in recent days. Where's AIM on bias crimes legislation?
So we took a position to support the passage of a bias crimes or hate crimes legislation this legislative session. We feel like it's an important step for economic development, for recruiting talent into the state, that we need to certainly have that box checked when we're being compared with other states around the country. You said it perfectly. The governor has stepped up his involvement in recent days. I think this will be the issue that probably dominates the news cycles between now and the end of the legislative session. Some major corporations in Indiana have signed on in support of passing the legislation, and I look for them to ramp up their involvement pretty dramatically over the next couple of weeks. So we'll see a lot of that activity over the next few weeks and into the waning days of the session.
All right, and just a reminder that at the bottom of this email, the email that includes legislative summary, there is a full tracking list of the bills that AIM is tracking. So please review that list so you can see what is still moving here at the halfway point of the General Assembly. Also, don't forget to register for the AIM Legislative Dinner. It's on March 20th here in Indianapolis. Space is limited and it is filling up. We have great lawmaker turnout thus far, so we really encourage you to go online and register for the AIM Legislative Dinner here in Indianapolis. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.